for it's 7 o'clock, and it is time to get into the business side of the stories this morning on Business Express. As I've been joined this morning by Oladele of CFA, founder of the Money Wheat Club, joining me this morning to pick up the business stories as a fallout from President Bola Tinubu's speech yesterday. So let's welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And for our usual clients and listener who would, where is Rotus? Rotus is having a well-deserved vacation. So yes, that's what it is.
Yes.
Fine. And it's love to you, everyone out there. So let's get into the story. If you followed the president's broadcast yesterday, moving away from politics, it delved into the business element of the country. So let's quickly look at this part where he talked about 6 months workers in the low cadre will be paid 25,000 naira additional. So what impact do you think this would have in an economy with the removal of a few subsidy at this time?
So for me, I think that the announcement, first of all, affects majorly federal staff. So while we have federal staff in every state, meaning that the impact will be spread across the nation, the fact is that most people are running small businesses, so they will not be affected by that. It also isn't a cue for me as an employer of labor to automatically increase the salary of my staff by 25,000 naira. That's another thing. And then also the amount compared to the actual increase in prices is almost insignificant, like compared to the reality of everything that we need to pay for. Even school fees alone has taken that, like the whole, in fact, if you compare calculate the 6 months, the increase in school fees and everything you need to pay has taken that up. And I think for me, the final thing that is most worrisome is that, okay, so you increase my salary for 6 months, and then after 6 months, I'll now go back to where I was coming from. Is that possible? Like, there's that chance that after they've tasted that juice, it's very difficult for you to pull it back from them, right? So whilst it is showing that, okay, they can feel what's happening, they're listening, which is good. But in terms of impact, like, okay, are we sure we are not creating another possible protest in the future, but I mean, let's see how it goes. It doesn't hurt to try and see what comes out of it.
This brings us to the next talking point, where the president also talked about the need to roll out the compressed natural gas buses to come in different parts to cushion the effect of the removal of subsidy for people. And that's another area of business that will spring up in itself, if you consider it. So should people now get ready to position themselves to begin to switch their cars in that respect, or open up businesses for compressed natural gas? What do you think?
So this one is quite interesting, right? Because for me, the first thing is, why is the government doing this? It's one of those things where for us to actually get the right impact, we need to get private sector people to actually get involved and use their own capital to start, right? So it's one of those things where it sounds good, but if it's the government that is driving it, then are you saying that as an individual with a private bus service, like maybe I have a bus that runs on the streets every day, are you saying that I would go to the government to go and change do you understand? Is there going to be a queue? All those bottlenecks that come with the government, right? So I would have preferred if the only involvement of the government would have been the announcement that it is available and these are the benefits if there's a perk for anyone that subscribes to it, right? And then now have people on their own saying, okay, I want to do this, right? As against government managing the process. We know for a fact that we do not have the skill, the capacity, the interest. We are just, the government and the civil service is just not the set of people to do it. But in terms of what the idea sounds, it sounds like a good one. We are moving in the direction of our reality, right? And we don't know how things will play out in terms of it can actually, if led to live and thrive properly, it can actually be a new economy, sort of, where young people without jobs can get jobs from it because everyone is turning to that. But as an individual right now, are you telling me that I'm going to convert my car to gas right now? I will not touch my car. I would wait and see
Okay.
how we have fared. Did we explode in traffic?
Now I see you are going to touch on the safety aspect, which you need a lot of convincing before you would want to go in that direction. But just a moment, I still need us to
Yeah,
explore that aspect, but let's
yeah.
get the listener involved here. If you can be part of the conversation at any point right now, just be able to send us a WhatsApp message on 0809-444-0981. The number once again is 0809-444-0981 will be where we get the WhatsApp messages responding to any of the issues that Oladele will be sharing with me this morning, talking about the business aspect of the president's broadcast yesterday. Now, still talking about that, you mentioned the process in itself is still not sure if there will be queues, but then it is often said that in times like these of uncertainty, the government is expected to lead the way then before it withdraws and allow private participants to come in. More of the safety you are also skeptical about. So people want to see the government lead the way.
And so the fact is that I think that notion is not really the best, and it hasn't worked all these years. So there's no point doing the same over and over again and expecting a different result. Number one, we have scarce resources, and that is a fact, right? Before the government is supposed to actually create an enabling environment. That is the job of the government, to create an enabling environment. If they wanted to do this, right, and get involved, then it should be some sort of public-private partnership type thing, because we have scarce resources. And let's face it, how many buses do they want to fit on their own? And how many buses does the government have on the roads? Does the federal government even have any buses, any public transport buses on the road? I don't think so. Right? Because it's more of like a state thing before it becomes private, if at all, and not every state even has that service. So the question is, are you going to go and buy new buses and start converting them? Are there buses that come automatically that way? I don't know that there are. Right? So there's this thing where, yes, you want the government, but guess what? If private sector actually picks it up, then it shows it's a bankable project. It shows that it's sustainable. It shows that people, like, you are taking a risk. For you to take that risk as an individual and put capital into it, then you must know that it will work. With the government, if it doesn't work, nothing's going to happen. We will just move on. But guess what? Our scarce resources have gone to something that is dead on arrival. So that whole comfort and confidence, I think I prefer private sector to show me the way on this one.
If I hear you right now this morning, it's simply saying the place of government is government and not in business. Simple. Okay, let's drift away now to, I guess, the network. Well, let's get back to you shortly, but let's explore this other issue. Now, the president also said to boost employment and urban incomes, he would be providing, or the government will be providing, investment funding for enterprises with potential. How can this again dovetails from what we just talked about, the government also wanting to lead the way again?
So it's one of those things, right?
Yes, well, we can hear you.
Okay, so it's one of those things where the fact is that if I as an individual see a bankable project, right, and I have money and I know that this thing is going to turn over with good returns and blah blah blah, we don't need the government to get involved, right? What we need is that law of contract can be enforced. What we need is that the person has power, do you get, to function effectively, or the tax man is not finding them for random things that don't add up, or you have your tax clearance already, do not come back and say they remembered something, right? There is a role of the government, right? And the moment the government begins to go from macro to micro, it ceases to be effective, right? So it might sound good, but all these interventions are a distraction. there is a fundamental scarcity of the basic expectations of the government. So we actually need to look at those things, right? If the president says today that he wants some private sector organization, investment funds to partner with them to invest in some certain areas, people will jump at it, right? So we don't need government capital to go into those things. But what we need is the assurance that there is ease of doing business. That's what we need, right? So whilst these things sound good, but the way we are right now, these are not the solutions that will move the needle, because you have to find how many people they do, 50,000 people. How many are we as a nation? So it's one of those things where, yes, it's good. Yes, some people benefit from it, but we are looking for scale.
This takes us to also onboarding of 15 million persons into the social safety net, according to the president in that speech. Again, here we go, scarce resources and application once again. What do you think about the impact?
Please, am I part of those 15 million?
You said you are the employer.
Can
we
I
can't
get
you
back? No, why?
Everybody needs,
so
you need some extra too.
Who told you that my eyes not red?
I see.
Exactly. So, yes, the government needs to do things, and I totally respect that fact. You can't just be quiet. You can't just, I guess there needs to be some short-term interventions that need to be done just for some respite, right? So from that angle, yes, go ahead. But the question is that, what's the criteria for that 15 million, please? And how can we all qualify for it?
You don't look vulnerable.
Get to those 15 million people?
You must be vulnerable. That's what it said. So you don't look vulnerable.
Everybody is vulnerable right now.
Oh.
Have you bought fuel recently? Your health situation, how is it?
Oh, okay. If it repairs, if you're talking about an SUV or probably for maybe a sedan or so.
Regardless, if your fuel bill per week was 2K and it has jumped to 10K, are you not vulnerable? You are very vulnerable. Everybody needs help. Okay. In fact, that 25K might be for you.
Okay. This leads me to this next development to ensure better grassroots. You also touched on the need for infrastructural development. And as one who has also been across about 3 states over the weekend, I see the deployable state of infrastructure, especially our roads. How effective and how soon do you expect the government to let us see this?
So the thing about infrastructure is that it's long-term in terms of the deployment and in terms of the impact, right? And this is one area where we actually do need the government. This is one place where the government actually needs to step in and step up. There's a lot of infrastructure deficits across the nation. So it's one of those things where they need to be intentional about where they are putting their first capital and how it will start yielding returns in terms of taxes, in terms of tolls, how is that going to become a bankable project? I dare say also that in the way things are, even though it is more expensive, I would actually prefer if we could do like real projects around the nation. It is more effective, it's more sustainable, right? It puts less cars on the road, so this whole fuel consumption thing becomes less of an issue, and you get to your location, your destination in a shorter, more defined period of time, right? So those are the kind of infrastructure that we need, right? But so if we go the whole let's fix roads, we understand how these things can be, we understand the security implications. It's just a lot. Right. So I would prefer rail, but if we end up doing roads, it's still good. But I also do think that people need to engage their state governments or governors more, because apart from the federal highways, there's a lot that needs to be done on the state level with respect to infrastructure.
So if you can do this for us, I'd like you to do this in, let's say, 40 seconds now. And it relates to the Central Bank of Nigeria. You also have on the need that going forward, monetary policy shall be for the benefit of all and not for the exclusive province of powerful and wealthy people. What's your outlook on this as we wrap up?
Oh, I think it's valid. I think everybody just needs price stability. That's one thing. So price affects price in terms of inflation, local inflation, and price in terms of exchange rates, right? Once that happens, once we can say that everybody's buying FX at the same price, not those different whatevers. And then once we know that the price is actually stable, we've gotten that level of stability, I think the central bank would have done like 80% of their work, right? And that will help everybody plan. That will help small businesses, that will help everybody position themselves to affect the fuel price, because that it's also moving up in line with exchange rates. It would help the nation. Just that simple price stability would have far-reaching effects across the nation.
Now, this takes us to our messages from the clients as we close up the show this morning. This one comes from Benga Kamwa, and he says, we have to emphasize the safety when handling CNG, that's a compressed natural gas, because it is a major concern in Nigeria. Rather than putting safety measures in place, we rather pray. Benga Kamwa, and he goes on, some of the policies of government look good on paper, but implementation is where the devil is for Nigeria. Tell me, what will the government do for the unemployed? Benga Kamu says. I've got Ishaka from Ebute Meta. Good morning. He says, the initial argument in favor of CNG was the fact that it was cheaper. Now that the price of CNG is skyrocketing, does the argument still make sense, Ola?
And so I think in terms of the cost compared to fuel, yes, you're not doing standalone, you're comparing to another alternative. So yes, because the alternative is also moving up, right? So it's comparison, it's not standalone than it is cheap, right? So from that angle, maybe. But we don't know the cost of conversion, if it makes sense, because you also have to factor that in.
Then Gilbert Musa from Festa comes up with a message on the cash increase for government workers. First, we have to ensure our domestic economy is working. Legacy infrastructure like water, good roads, and throw-in rails, as Ola has pointed out, stable electricity to enhance local manufacturing, which will lead to employment generation rather than handouts in the form of cash, which is the long-term is not sustainable. And our final message is from Tayo. Tyler, thanks for the welcome back. I see that. I hope the project listed by government don't become white elephant projects with investors and operators denied access after kickoff. It looks like a wish list. Ola, that's where we drop the anchor on the show this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
And you too. Have a great day.
Bye.
And that's a wrap on the show. I've been speaking with Oladele of CFA, founder, the Money Wheat Club, and that's how we bring Business Express this morning to a close. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa. Good morning.